Masked agents dragging Americans off the streets and shooting American citizens isn't law and order. Show me your papers, secret police. That's not what we do in America.
Laura Ingraham took a pause from eating bats for breakfast to remark, I tend to agree with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who believes any such investigation is probably unwise. Oh, unwise.
Unwise,
Laura.
unwise.
Wow.
The economic gaslighting is one of the reasons Republicans are going to lose.
Do you think it's possible, Matt, that when Trump heard Golden Dome, he thought he heard golden showers, and that's why he suddenly got interested? Welcome to Political Rehab, smart politics without the hangover. I'm Matt.
And I'm Matt.
Today, the whole world squashes an attempted MAGA political retribution effort. The administration goes for yet another one against the media, economic gaslighting, a terrible situation in Iran, and an all-out war on Greenland. But let's start, as always, with our Trump dump.
Time for the Trump dump.
That's right. Time for the Trump dump, our weekly segment where we get it out of our system. Because I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or independent, there is something Donald Trump did this week that pisses you off. I'm going to do this a little bit different. I want to talk to the big man himself, Mr. President. Sir, Matt Wylie here. Hi. Look, I know I'm not your favorite Republican strategist. I've written a few things you don't love. I get it. I called MAGA cults. I've questioned if you're too old to be president, but we need to talk about immigration. I've spent almost 30 years in the trenches getting Republicans elected all over this country. And I don't have to tell you, immigration is our easiest issue. If a campaign needs money, you send out one hardline immigration email and donations pour in. It's like our own personal ATM machines. And then came Biden. Oh my God, Biden handed us the greatest political gift, open borders, chaos. It made it so easy for Republicans to sweep the elections last year. Immigration should have been a layup for you. But I got to be honest with you, sir, respectfully, you're fucking it up. Look, it's hard to fix immigration. This mess wasn't created overnight. It took decades of cowardly politicians who wouldn't secure the border or fix a broken system. But you chose the worst possible option. You sent armed, masked ICE agents into the streets of America. Look, we're with you on deporting violent criminals, gang members, drug traffickers. Most Americans would even say if you're here illegally and you get caught breaking the law, even if it's not violent, you go home fine. But sending people to overseas gulags is not enforcement. Masked agents dragging Americans off the streets and shooting American citizens isn't law and order. Show me your papers, secret police. That's not what we do in America. Now you're talking about invoking the Insurrection Act to put even more military on the streets. This isn't just bad politics. It's an assault on our rights. You took the strongest issue Republicans had in a generation and you turned it into a constitutional crisis. Yes, you may have removed some criminals, but you replaced them with men in masks and body armor. You replaced gang violence with government force. You replace street crime with government power that no free country should ever normalize. That's not winning. That's how you tear up the Constitution.
For my Trump dump this week, I want to pick up a thread that you just laid down and talk a little bit about the fact that this week, President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy United States troops to Minneapolis to put down protests over immigration enforcement.
Karen, what would it take and what would it mean for the president to invoke this?
Diane, we have heard the president threaten this before, but what this would mean is the president could deploy the military and he could federalize National Guard troops. And I think it's important to remember that this has not been used, the Insurrection Act, since 1992.
This is absolutely illusory, insane, and insidious. Illusory because there's no insurrection. There's a hideous assault on American citizens that you, Matt Wylie, just laid out by masked federal thugs who are illegally snatching people off the streets and out of their homes, and there are First Amendment protected and righteous protests. The Insurrection Act was originally designed for extreme circumstances, like when state governments are unable to suppress violent rebellion. Recent modern invocations were mostly for civil rights enforcement, school desegregation under Eisenhower and Kennedy, or to support governors. This is insane because it amounts to putting out a fire with gasoline. Trump intentionally set this goon squad to provoke violence, to create scenes for social media of brown-skinned people being tackled and choked out by armed agents because the MAGA base gets off on this shit and Stephen Miller fantasizes about it when he's not otherwise trawling through the personal ads in Soldier of Fortune magazine. Sending in more guys with guns to shoot even more unarmed civilians is absolutely criminally deranged. And it's insidious because defining this protest as an insurrection the week after the 5-year anniversary of January 6th, when 140 actual police officers, not your violent cosplaying rent-a-cops, were injured by your insurrectionists who you then pardoned, is the height of gaslighting bullshit. History is going to detest you, and no amount of goons with guns can stop that. With that, let's get to this week's rundown. That went badly. The Trump administration's push to initiate a legal crusade against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell reverberated across Washington and beyond. The markets were spooked. The US dollar weakened. Gold rallied. Deep criticism from a growing number of Republicans who essentially said, do not do this. Do not do this. Sir, Matt, your reaction to this insane weaponization of federal power against the chairman of the Federal Reserve?
First of all, it just destroys the market, destroys our credibility. But what also struck me about this, it felt like the second act of Minnesota. Last week, Noam sent in troops because she was basically trying to be tough. She was trying to give Trump another political edge. And it felt like Bondi was kind of doing the same thing. Because let's not forget, Trump claimed, what's happening? I don't know what's going on. Like a sleepy grandfather. I think a couple episodes ago, we called them Donnie's Angels. It might be Trump's harem right now because they are just literally doing anything to please them. And this is just a disaster in the making. And that's why
the male ones too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But it was a disaster in the making. I mean, that's why you had so many Republicans rebuke this so quickly, so easily. It's just a mess. And it's something that we should, quite frankly, know better.
When the right-wing media machine can't even get itself together to back you on something like this, when in fact they're trying to put the kibosh on it, you know that you've got yourself a problem there. You had to search pretty darn far down the Fox News website when news of this broke to find any coverage. It was barely mentioned on primetime Fox News coverage. Laura Ingraham took a pause from eating bats for breakfast to remark, I tend to agree with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who believes any such investigation is probably unwise. Oh, unwise.
Unwise,
Laura.
Unwise.
Wow. Oh, please.
Yeah.
The children, earmuffs. And of course, the Wall Street Journal editorial board headlined Lawfare for Dummies, Monetary Edition. This is the entire world saying, guys, you have really gone off the deep end. Nobody wants this. And by the way, it makes you look so weak, so desperate, like such a failure. I mean, let's hope that this is a bad enough faceplant that we won't see more of this going forward, but I fear that we might.
It's the problem when we don't actually have an agenda right now. It's creating a complete and total mess for us, much like some of the stories this week where just a few days ago, FBI agents raided a Washington Post reporter. Senator Elise Slotkin said she's under the target of investigation. We've already talked about at some length, I think you talked about last week, about Hegseth and the War Department and what's going on with their attacks. We right now seem to have an all-out assault on dissent, where every time something happens, it feels like it is going after a political enemy.
Susie Wiles, when she gave that interview to Vanity Fair, she said the quiet part out loud. She said, this is absolutely a campaign of political retribution against all of Trump's enemies list, one that she claims she's trying to stop. And we'll see about that, by the way. I noticed how you fell under the MAGA mind virus for just a moment there, Matt, by calling it the Department of War. There was an analysis this week that changing the name on all the stationery and sides of ships and whatnot to Department of War would actually cost taxpayers $125 million, which is far in excess of any savings that was generated by Doge. This is absolute, out and out lawfare against reporters repressing freedom of speech, repressing the First Amendment, repressing the duly elected representatives of the people of the United States of America. It is absolutely authoritarian fascist bullshit. There is no justification for it whatsoever. And once again, I'm looking forward to Trump enablers bending over backwards to try to explain this away. Looking forward to that. It should be an exercise in fantasy.
I don't know if I could explain this away either, but what I find interesting is this Washington Post reporter is sharing classified documents. And so now it's okay to have the FBI raid that, but when it happened to Trump at Mar-a-Lago, this was somehow completely different.
May I refer you to Hegseth, Peter, and the Signalgate scandal, which he claimed, by the way, this should really be an addition of that's bullshit. He claimed total exoneration. I was totally exonerated when the Inspector General's report found that actually he had imperiled American lives, the lives of service members, and had breached protocols for classified information. No, absolutely. Fine. You know what? You want to go after this reporter? Just get in line right behind Pete Hegseth and your own bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Please be my guest. Speaking of gaslighting, let's talk about the recent round of economic gaslighting, an attempt at spin, which is pretty lame, perhaps a break into dementia. The highlight for this was Donald Trump declaring that grocery prices were down. Astute viewers will remember that this was the topic of our very first That's Bullshit segment. That is demonstrably untrue. The price of beef has risen 16.4% over the last year. The price of coffee is up a whopping 19.8%. The price of lettuce, for Pete's sake, is 7.3% higher. Frozen fish, 8.6% higher. I could go on and on. Overall, the cost of food at home has risen 2.4% overall in the last 12 months. Now, to be fair, we did have the world's worst defense of this from Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins.
The question you're asking, and it's a really important one, is while we're asking Americans to reconsider what they're eating, are we actually asking Americans, especially those who are living on the margins, are we asking them to spend more on their diet? And the answer to that is no. We've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost around $3 a meal for a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and one other thing.
Matt, do you feel nice and full on a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a corn tortilla, and one other thing?
I would like to refer you back to my dose of hope and my diet. There is no broccoli in this matter, so that's fine. But
then, you know what? That means you have more budget available for one other thing.
For one other thing, whatever that
is. I hope that one other thing is a T-bone.
The economic gaslighting is one of the reasons Republicans are going to lose. It is that bad right now. It is completely way out there. But it's not even just the economic gaslighting where we seem to have a break from reality. I mean, along the way in Trump's economic speech the other day, I think he said he won Minnesota 3 times. He felt like he won Minnesota 3 times. He didn't. Like, if you just look at it, he lives in this alternate reality right now. You did some great stuff this week on dementia and him wandering the ballroom aimlessly and getting up. We're watching a president who either is trying to spin his way out of his bad policies, or he is so bad, absent from reality, that he shouldn't be president. This week, Trump pledged to come to the aid of protesters in Iran for violence. On Tuesday, Trump renewed his warning, saying Iranian patriots keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers, even God, make Iran great again. I don't know. That was a little weird. And then earlier this week, he actually said Iran's not killing people or not killing protesters anymore, but yet we're still pulling out non-essential people in the Middle East. It really does seem to me that we're reaching a point where Trump just wants to flex. Trump has already threatened Greenland. Trump has already threatened Cuba, Mexico, Canada. And right now, it feels like Iran might be his easy target because I'm not sure the world will condemn as much as he tries to go to Cuba. What do you make with what's going on in Iran right now?
It would have been a heck of a more ready target if we had maintained an aircraft carrier group presence in the Middle East. We pulled them in order to involve them in the operation in Venezuela. One was a war of choice. The other was perhaps a war that's being thrust upon us. Look, I don't think that there's a simple partisan side's answer to this. I think it's complex. I think it's filled with unintended consequences. I don't think that there's a clear path forward. And often the steps we take lead to reverberations many years later that we can't comprehend. If we were to eliminate this horrible Iranian regime, we don't know what would follow it. And we learned in a very bitter way what can happen when there's a power vacuum in this area of the world in Iraq. So I'm glad that Iran's judiciary announced that there is not a death sentence for the protester Irfan Sultani, whose execution was believed to be imminent. I'm glad that the assessment is that the violence against protesters has slowed. I don't actually have an answer for the proper next step here. I just pray that level-headed, sane, cautious people are going to have prominent voices in this administration, because that has not always been the pattern thus far.
For me, and I think for a lot of Republicans, I think the real issue is Trump and this administration doesn't really seem to have a plan. And we know sometimes foreign events have a tendency to dictate and reverberate, but this just feels like Trump is picking on a target. You clearly haven't thought things out because, like you pointed out, our carriers, our troops, we're out of position for all of this. And it's only going to get harder along the way.
Speaking of the next target in wars of choice, Greenland is next on the agenda. Vice President J.D. Vance hosted a spectacularly unsuccessful meeting between the U.S., Danish, and Greenland administrations. Europe didn't take this as a promising sign, since J.D. Vance is a well-known hater of Europe. Trump said this week that we need Greenland for our Golden Dome missile interceptors, missing the fact that we actually have unlimited military access to Greenland already, and we can already use it for our Golden Dome missile interceptors. Panic-stricken Europe is sending troops to Greenland. This is meant to be a signal to protect our NATO ally from us. Matt, defend your boy.
Look, I love a good strategic defense plan. I love, obviously, a Golden Dome sounds great. Maybe it would work. Who knows? But that's why we have NATO. That's why we have allies. We don't have to take over a country to go do this. What I also find kind of interesting about this whole thing is by putting Vance in charge of this. I mean, this is a guy who's an MIA. Rubio's gotten all the credit. Rubio was the one in the tent when we did Venezuela. This feels like this is more of a political posturing for the next presidential race, because everybody out there, and I know you love to read the MAGA blogs, and I know you love to read all the Republican stuff out there, but a lot of people are moving towards Rubio. They're looking out there and just saying, Vance can't do this. Vance is a problem. And I think this almost feels like it was more Vance trying to get out and say, look at me, I can.
Do you think it's possible, Matt, that when Trump heard Golden Dome, he thought he heard golden showers, and that's why he suddenly got interested? I have to tell you, if you're JD and you're thinking of leveraging this for some kind of Republican advantage, Representative Don Bacon this week told the Omaha World Herald, I'll be candid with you, there are so many Republicans mad about this. If he went through with the threats, I think it would be the end of his presidency, saying he would lean toward impeachment in such a scenario.
Wow.
This is, speaking of golden things, this is not the golden ticket for any of you politically. And with that, let's wrap up and move on to our rotating segment of the week. Good idea, bad idea.
It's time for good idea or bad idea.
First up, Joe Rogan, the mega podcaster. I guess that's the nicest thing I can call him. Not a fan necessarily, but he did have some things to say this week.
People in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?
Matt Wylie, Joe Rogan's comments this week about the U.S. Gestapo. Good idea, bad idea.
I think it's a good idea overall. He has a huge audience. People listen, and it's really starting to show the cracks of that base that supported Trump and also helps get Republicans elected. So I hate the terms Gestapo and Nazis and Hitler because I feel like they've been so overused, they just become noise. But I think when Joe Rogan says it, it's probably a good idea.
It's a longstanding rule in politics for political operatives like you and me not to invoke the Nazis because it always boomerangs on you and looks bad because it seems like a hyperbolic historical comparison. In this case, if the flu shits, wear it. Polls this week also paint a pretty grim picture of public opinion about the ICE enforcement operations going on in Minnesota. The point is that Joe Rogan is not only leading public opinion, he also has his finger on the pulse of public opinion and recognizing it and reflecting it in his comments. I think it's a pretty good idea. Speaking of steps that can throw sand in the authoritarian gears, 6 prosecutors quit this past week over the push to investigate the shooting victim in Minneapolis and her widow. The largest mass quitting we've seen from the Department of Justice since February 2025. Is this mass quitting a good idea?
Absolutely not. It's a horrible idea. Everybody loves to think that you're just going to take a stand, but the problem is we need good people doing good things within government. The Trump administration will find someone to do it. And if you are not there, if you don't stay in your position, you don't fight from the inside, you just allow this abuse of power to run rampant. It's a bad idea.
That is a fascinating take. And you know what? You're making me think about this a little bit because I really see where you're coming from. You do need good people to stay in place, lest worst ones, unqualified hacks, Lindsay Halligans, if you will, take over and do even worse things. My initial instinct was that this was a good idea because going along with a blatant bullshit cover your ass piece of fuckery is not something with which most people's moral compasses put up. Wow, that was a tangled but grammatically correct sentence. May have persuaded me that it's a mixture. It's an odd hybrid of good idea and bad idea.
This week, the Clintons were subpoenaed to show up in front of Congress to testify in the Epstein investigation. They, of course, declined. Matt, good idea, bad idea?
I'm going to be Clinton-esque about this and say it depends on what the meaning of is, and it depends on what the meaning of good is. This is obviously a ham-handed deflection on the part of James Comer, the committee chair who's issued this subpoena. And there's a part of me, certainly, that agrees with not participating in it. But I also do believe in obeying congressional subpoenas. I believe in the rule of law. And so I guess I prefer that the Clintons do that they comply with the subpoena, that they show up and then they put on a Pam Bondi-esque performance where they just grandstand and say, I'm out of order, you're out of order. But I guess that might also further degrade respect for Congress. So I'm left puzzled on this. Enlighten me.
First of all, can you further degrade respect for Congress?
No,
I'm
you
not sure you
cannot.
lower.
So,
You cannot.
point
No.
taken.
So
Yes.
let's start with that. Look, my first instinct, much like your last one, was like, oh, this is a good idea. No, it's not. This was a bad idea. I think with you, I agree there's a rule of law, but more importantly, America missed probably the greatest spectacle in entertainment that would ever exist. I mean, yeah, that's about right. That's, I think, what happened. But Bill Clinton in front of Congress, there's always that nuclear option. Imagine what would happen if he said, you know what? Let's not also forget the Clintons, especially Bill Clinton, they're masterful as far as getting out of this stuff. Hillary's not great, but she's fine. But Bill
That was a
Clinton,
campaign slogan, by the way.
guess what could have happened if that was coming on? That could have been popcorn worthy. I would have gone to a movie theater to watch that. That would have been fantastic.
You've totally persuaded me, Wylie. I think for the entertainment value alone of seeing someone with the intellectual heft of Bill Clinton, who David Gergen, who had worked for 4 presidents across different parties, once told me privately that the smartest of them, believe it or not, was Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, number 2.
Wow.
The prospect of seeing him run circles around James Comer, that absolutely buffoonish clod. Chairman Comer, you're a real piece of shit. Okay, Ford plant worker TJ Sabula is said to have called the president a pedophile protector, and then Trump flipped Sabula the bird. Is any of this a good idea?
I'm going to say bad idea for so many reasons. Speech protects people from government intervention. It doesn't protect you to say whatever. This happened while Trump was touring a Ford plant. Understandably, he got suspended for what he did. you can't just say and do whatever you want on while you're at work. Now, look, it's not all sad news for him. He had a GoFundMe page. I think he's raised all kinds of money right now, but it's probably a bad idea to call the president a pedophile protector while at work, while he's touring your plant.
I think it's a great idea. Great fucking idea. Do it. Now, look, take your suspension like a man. But
Yeah.
speak your mind, brother. Great fucking idea.
So Trump this week floated the idea and he wants to cap credit card rates at 10%. Now, ignoring the fact that he doesn't have the authority to do it, that only Congress could do this, is capping credit card rates at 10% good idea or bad idea?
Matt, you may remember that I studied economics as an undergraduate, and I'm going to present to you the old joke that if you want to get 10 opinions, ask 2 economists. And in this case, 1. This is a marginally good idea, believe it or not, but there's a ton of qualifications on this. Vanderbilt University analysis suggested that such a cap could save consumers roughly $100 billion a year. That's good. However, there are legitimate warnings that this could limit credit and slow economic growth. That's bad. Limiting credit to high-risk people isn't the worst thing, so that's good. But it could push them to avail themselves of more fringe banking options like payday loans. That's bad. It reduces spending, which slows GDP, which could be good for inflation. So that's both good and bad. It's very confusing. A better idea would be a deeper, lasting reform of consumer credit practices.
I'm just envisioning all the graphics up there. That's good, bad, good, bad. I think fundamentally it's bad. As a free market Republican, I don't like it when government tries to get involved in this. I hate it even more when the president of the United States thinks he has the authority to do it. It's plain hoping to try to get more people to vote for Republicans, because as we've talked about on many occasions, Trump cares about one thing. I think it's a bad idea. I don't like it. But then again, I'm not an economist.
Tall title tales this week. Lindsay Halligan defended her use of the U.S. attorney title, her continuing use, I should say, even after a federal judge said, that's not your title. You were illegally appointed in a combative court filing. Donald Trump defended his Wikipedia entry, which noted that he was president of Venezuela. George Santos, I'm sure, has called himself Emperor of the Moon this week. Matt, any of these a good idea?
I love the fact that we're just giving each other titles. Like, that's just fantastic. You know what? I think I'm going to be this today. It really goes to the fact of how unserious this government has become. It goes to how unserious this administration has become. The filing by the Justice Department, they flat out tried to say, no, she really is this. She hasn't been confirmed. She's interim. She can't use the title. It really diminishes the criminal justice system. From a good government perspective, it's a bad idea. From the idea of, is it entertaining? Yeah, good idea.
That's a great idea, because if they can give themselves made up titles, I can give them whatever titles that I want to. And I'm going to call them both fuckwits. Let's go with fuckwits.
Is that hyphenated or how is that?
Dealer's choice, man.
Apparently, now Democrats are out there calling to abolish ICE. Matt, is this a good idea or bad idea for Democrats?
I wrote about this extensively on Worth Knowing with Matt Robison this week. Look, I am as mad as hell about what I'm seeing happening in America right now. It's hard to get the image of Renee Goode out of your head. It's hard to get the image, which I posted this week, of a woman sobbing after her door was broken down and her husband was dragged away by literal jackbooted government thugs. It's very hard to look at this and not turn that righteous anger into wanting to abolish or defund ICE. But it's a strategic trap. It's a mistake. And there are more effective things that the coalition of the sane can do to slow down and stop this kind of abuse. I laid them all out in the article. I hope people will check it out. This is unfortunately a bad idea.
First of all, that article is amazing and everybody should check that out. From a Republican perspective, I think this is the greatest idea you guys have come up with.
Right, because you like the trap.
That's exactly right.
The only thing that can save Republicans from
I
this
am
disaster
looking
they've
for anything that can help us out along the way. So defund ICE. Any operatives that may be listening to this, please embrace this, run on it. It's Help Me Obi-Wan. You're our only hope.
Right. And you know what? I know you're being a little tongue in cheek about this, but seriously, I mean, this is truly, if you were on Truth Serum, the advice you would give to Democrats is just don't hand the opposition a cudgel to beat you with. All right, final one. Democrats getting kind of frisky, kind of optimistic this week. A high-profile Senate recruitment of Mary Peltola in Alaska, running for the U.S. Senate. Some signs that the shutdown kind of worked, and the elevation of the ACA subsidies to the top of the agenda is continuing to get some traction, get some movement on that issue, and some political results. Democrats getting kind of bullish. Is that a good idea?
If you recall in our prediction segment, I said Democrats are going to win the Senate. Again, I don't want this, but I think this is the reality that as Republicans, we're all going to have to face. This recruitment in Alaska is a big deal. I mean, I've worked in Alaska. I know what this is. This is a Republican state. We view it as a Republican state. Dan Sullivan is not the strongest candidate. Democrats have a real shot. When you take a red state like Alaska and you turn it blue with a recruit like this, you should be bullish. And there's also North Carolina. I think Democrats are going to pick up North Carolina. Right now, you're picking up two seats that we shouldn't lose, but we're going to because we're being stupid.
It's an old saw that hope is not a strategy, but to the extent that discouraging people, getting them to disconnect, disengage is part of the authoritarian playbook, hope is a strategy, and we should indulge in a little bit of it. That's it for our good idea, bad idea deep dive of the week. And with that, let's get to one of our favorite moments of the week. That's bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
A bullshit?
Renee Nicole Goode, a 37-year-old mother of three, shot and killed by ICE agent Jonathan Ross in Minneapolis. She was unarmed and was captured on video smiling at the ICE agents and telling them she wasn't mad at them. Moments before the shooting, within hours, they'd uncovered the truth. Renee Goode, age 44, with a long, scary criminal rap sheet. But that's bullshit. The supposed criminal record was entirely made up by incredibly clumsy morons who forgot to list a county or state, gave her wrong age and date of birth, and invented weird crimes like interfering with medical treatment. But this was just the opening move in an obscene MAGA con job, because next we got this.
Instead of investigating Renee Goode's killer, the Justice Department is now investigating her wife.
That's right. Right after Ms. Goode was shot, according to the New York Times, the head of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division said they were going to open an investigation not into the agent, but into the victim and her wife. This was such outrageous bullshit that
6 federal prosecutors in Minnesota resigned today after senior DOJ officials ordered them to begin investigating Renee Goode's widow, Becca.
But isn't it normal to investigate a shooting victim and her family?
This is not normal. There is absolutely no legal basis for the Justice Department to investigate Becca Goode.
But this person saying this doesn't know what she's talking about, right?
I'm Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice.
Oh. But the bullshit didn't end there, because the DOJ went to their next move, saying that the shooter had been grievously injured, had suffered from internal bleeding, and I actually have secret footage here of the medical assessment that they gave to Jonathan Ross.
You see this smudge here that looks like my fingerprint? No, that's trauma!
Are you sure there isn't a little soft tissue trauma in the facial area?
Oh, yeah, tons of it. Just say when.
Was he actually injured? Maybe, but given the complete and sadistic lies that the Department of Justice has perpetrated from the moment this happened, they've earned the opposite of the benefit of the doubt. They've earned the distinction of labeling everything they say
bullshit. You just keep cranking these things out, and wow, such a great segment.
I appreciate it. On that upbeat note, let's get to our dose of hope.
Trump's first year back in office. I think we all agree it's been a bit of a shit show. A lot has happened, a lot of very serious conversations about who we are as a country, what we stand for, how we show up in the world, and every day feels like a new crisis. But there's been one bright spot. Marco Rubio, the face of U.S. foreign policy and the man with 1,000 jobs in Washington. Now, look, you may not agree with his policies, but he's been the adult in the room, calm, measured, actually sounded like a guy who's read the briefing book. And honestly, that alone feels refreshing, but that's not my dose of hope. No, my dose of hope is all those AI Marco Rubio memes, because while Washington is losing its mind, the internet has decided to turn Marco Rubio into everything from a Marvel superhero to a telenovela villain to a Pixar character with a six-pack. You can't go on social media without seeing one. Even CBS News did a segment on this.
And now AI memes have added to that portfolio, casting Secretary Rubio as the new governor of Minnesota, the new Shah of Iran, the prime minister of Greenland, the new manager of Manchester United, the head of Hilton Hotels, and highest of high honors of all, the new Michelin man.
And that's why I still have faith in America, because no matter how dark things can sometimes feel, no matter how serious politics becomes, the internet always finds a way to show up and say, yeah, but what if we made them a cartoon? The internet always wins. And that, my friends, is my dose of hope.
Mine certainly rhymes with yours because I want to talk a little bit about Ryan Chen, the Chinese Trump, who has taken social media by storm with his uncanny impersonation of the U.S. president.
This guy, he likes China so much, right? We're going to teach him some Chinese.
That's right.
Some Chinese.
Very strongly.
Okay. You want to learn some Chinese?
I want to learn Chinese. Teach me. Teach your favorite president.
Favorite president. So I'm going to teach you something because we're friends, right? I'm going to teach you. In China, we call bros. We call it 兄弟ho. Shung di ho. Oh, wow. Wow. It's very thorough. Very thorough.
Now, I don't happen to believe that comedy or satire or mockery really changes a lot in the political world. In the 1980s, the character Loads of Money viciously mocked British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Journalists began to refer to the loads of money mentality and the loads of money economy, and it didn't hurt her. It didn't hurt her one bit. As a matter of fact, Thatcher just adopted the meme and turned it to her advantage. We've seen it with James Austin Johnson on SNL. He's been absolutely killing it with his Trump impression for years. Didn't win any elections, especially not in 2024. But as you said, Matt, maybe that's not what all this is for. Maybe it doesn't need to change minds or move nations. We need satire and comedy and mockery because it's the way to keep us all sane and get us through what can often be a painful reality. So seeing something that the whole world is literally uniting around, even our friends in China, and seeing it poke holes in the world's #1 asshole, that is a bright spot. And for me, and I'm guessing for you, it's a dose of hope. And on that note, for Matt, I'm Matt. We will see you next time.